The war for Iokath tries to bring a lot to the game, but unfortunately it doesn't quite hit the mark. BioWare is fighting a real uphill battle here. In some of my earlier videos, I've mentioned how tough it is to keep writing stories for the Outlander character. Once Conan the Barbarian became king, his story came to an end, and in much the same way, the way Kotet ended seemed to close the story on the Outlander. Due to this, the War for Iokath feels a bit like a rushed sequel. On the upside, it does continue the story, but new plot threads feel rushed and forced instead of a natural continuation of the universe. However, playing this chapter, I couldn't help but feel that BioWare was trying to meet a list of demands from hungry players. More story? Check. Return of companions? Check. Intro for a raid boss? Check. New questing hub? Check. At the same time, the content lacks some of the needed depth to make this feel on par with our expectations. The War for Iokath picks up an indeterminate amount of time after the end of Kotet, with an anonymous tip about a superweapon on Iokath. This brings us to one of the first major plot holes of the chapter that makes this feel rushed. A tip comes in that there's a superweapon on Iokath. They might as well have called it the MacGuffin device, because no one inside of the three factions actually knows if it exists, what it does, how it works, or even if they could actually use it. It's one of my biggest bones to pick with this story, especially since the tip comes from a traitor in your own midst, who most definitely couldn't have known the answers to these questions. We're just supposed to accept that there's a weapon and move on. You'll eventually have to make a permanent choice as you continue down the story to join with either the Republic or the Empire to take the third faction out. I actually like this permanence of this choice. Asina and Jace both fill the roles of antagonists satisfactorily. Regardless of which one you pick, the other one will become your opponent and things play out virtually the same. However, the ending of this chapter leaves a lot to be desired. When you do find the superweapon, unsurprisingly revealed to be the raid bosses from the new Iokath raid, Tyth displays a magical ability to suss out that there's a traitor inside of your midst. How a droid has clairvoyancy to know that is beyond me, and is quickly glossed over in the story. He announces that you are being betrayed, and how he knows it leaves a gaping plot hole that is never explained. The traitor aspect of the story, especially after playing Crisis on Umbara, the next chapter, is really poorly integrated here. For sure, I can understand BioWare's need to set up a new antagonist for players to go up against, but the chosen traitor, who for spoiler reasons I won't mention till my next video, has very poor motivations to betray you. In this chapter, much is alluded to, but at no point did I feel, as a player, that I should care. I'll talk more about how this could have looked differently during my video on Crisis for Umbara. It's great to see Alara Dorn and Malavi Quinn back in the story, but sadly, there's not much meat on this bone. For fans of these two characters, there's a few extra lines early in the chapter, and a few lines at the end if you've romanced them before and choose to romance them again. Unlike Vet's return scene from Knights of the Fallen Empire, though, where there was a few minutes given during the chapter dedicated to finding out what she had been up to the past few years, and also giving you a really tender moment as a reward for the players who had romanced the lovable blue alien before, this chapter closes the door very quickly. I definitely wanted a little bit more in this area, but it's never really given. Tyth feels very hit or miss as far as the entrance of a raid boss in this chapter. On the one hand, he looks great. He's tall, intimidating, and almost antiquated compared to the other Iokath droids. He really holds a different look and feel than other droid bosses we've seen. I definitely was excited to fight this boss after seeing his entrance, but less excited for the writing in the scene. Again, how Tyth has clairvoyancy definitely took me out of the moment of enjoying his introduction. Iokath as a planet is fairly bland. It's a metal world, and most of the running around of its surface is a confusing mess of instance gates, teleporters, and subway elevators. Even with the story guide marks on your mini-map to help you know where to go as you're going through the story, the world never really seems to come together or make sense. It almost feels like pieces of ramps and metal scenery are kind of put together in such a way that just obstruct you from being able to just ride straight across the map. I didn't used to like Iokath very much. I never really liked the lava planet designs, but looking back on it, I give that planet a lot of props in terms of design. You start on one side of the map, and as the story progressed, you move through the territory until you were at the gates of the raid. It's actually a very solid design, and one that I wish had been repeated here. There is an upshot to Iokath, and that is that there are some goodies to farm for here if you're into that sort of thing. There's also materials around for your crafting if you don't like running around crowded spaces for the highest tier mats, but I would say that the population, though being low, it is spaced far apart, and the enemies here are tougher than they are in most of the other farming areas. As far as gameplay, this chapter does mix it up a little bit. You are going to be running on your feet with a companion facing lots of different scrub enemies, and there's actually a few different mini-bosses in there to fight as well. You'll also get inside of a walker and stomp, shoot, blast, and run around Iokath, and that is kind of fun, and it definitely breaks up the gameplay. I would also mention that there is one strange sequence where you will be, for a very short time, an Iokath droid. This segment actually felt like they could have just skipped it, to be perfectly honest. It didn't really feel like it brought anything to the narrative. That all being said, I do think it's worth mentioning that the droids on Iokath are slightly tougher than you'd see in the enemies in Knights of the Eternal Throne and Knights of the Fallen Empire. They do take a little bit more damage to kill than your average droid, so if you are running around Iokath, just be prepared that you won't be able to just spam your AoEs to kill everything. That's what I got for you today, guys. The next video I'll do is about the Crisis on Umbara, but if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. That way you can always be up to date on the newest videos I release. And until then, I'll see you next time, guys.